الشيطان ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وإن الله لمع المحسنين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Last night we got our muqaddamah discussion out of the way, where we talked a little bit about the month that we are in now, and may Allah accept your fast inshallah and give us tawfiq to now travel along the various levels of fasting, from depriving the body from food and water to depriving the eyes of the triggers of sin and the ears of those things that are haram, to depriving the hearts of reliance and love on anybody but Allah. We got our feet wet a little bit last night in terms of studying the tone for the month of Ramadan, and I ask Allah for tawfiq for myself and for all of you to act on what was discussed. But as promised, I wanted to begin our topic tonight and delve into the Quran a little bit. And before I actually get to the surah itself, it's important that we understand that the Quran itself describes itself as a furqan. And what is a furqan? A furqan ultimately is a criteria between right and wrong. And why is that important? Because in this day and age, there's so much confusion amongst our youth, amongst a lot of us. We don't know what's right, we don't know what's wrong. In terms of just the idea of, who is right, who's on the path, where should I follow, they're saying this, they're saying that, these guys are saying this. And so there's a lot of confusion. And without the Quran, without studying the Quran, of course, there's going to be some massive confusion. And we end up making the wrong choices. Now I get it, a lot of us are not from the Arabic culture. We don't know the language. It's a very intimidating book. If we have a proper translation, there's thine and thou and thus, and it's a very weird Shakespearean Old English. On top of that, we're told, look, you're not a mufassir. Even if you got a good translation, don't pretend like you know what the book means. So there's a lot of levels that deter us from entering this book. But inshallah, if you do open the book and you're able to come across a few verses, some verses are muhkam, some are mutashabih, as the Quran itself describes itself. Some verses are very open, some are allegorical, some require, yes, tafsir. Others are very clear in its message. But to simply say, look, that book is, it's too far for me, it's too high for me, it's not in the language I know, I can't understand, so it's up there until someone dies or someone gets married, is an injustice to the Quran. We'll complain on the Day of Judgment that I was left alone. That the Prophet says, my nation left this, mahjura. It's a completely, they were heedless towards the Quran. They had forgotten, ignored the Quran almost. My nation, no one else was my nation. Oh me, my nation had done this. So it's important that at least in the month of Ramadan, where the nuzul al-daf'i of the Quran, that instantaneous revelation of the Quran happened, of course, in this month of Ramadan, during the nights of Qadr, that we at least open the book and find out what's inside this glorious Quran. Why is it a living miracle for us that has transcended now the Prophet himself, generations now before us, and right now even for today, for us today, is a living and breathing miracle. Right? Inshallah, we will look at Surah Hujurat. Okay? And there's been a lot of things that have been said about Surah Hujurat. It's the 49th chapter of the Quran, 18 verses, and there are an immense amount of akhlaqi, ethical lessons in this short chapter. Okay. There's been a lot of books written about the explanation of it. Tafsir has been written about it. The base of my discussion will be on Ayatollah Jafar Subhani's book on this topic. And the reason why I chose this book or this surah, and all of you know that I choose my topics very carefully, it's because looking through the various ayat, it's almost as if these discussions that are inside of this verse obviously are prevalent today in our society. And this social norm of individualism, of the destruction of thoughts, of the idea of us just becoming individuals who are giving into shaitan, all that, of course, is very norm now. It's to the point, if you don't do those things, you're considered to be abnormal, outside the box, outside the bubble, weird almost. And so you're ostracized. And so a 15, 16-year-old looking to fit in will give up all of the tarbiyat that his parents gave him only to fit into today's norms. That's the problem. But we don't understand sometimes what is inside this glorious book of ours. So I want to open up and examine. Let's explore the miracle as the flyer has says, and let's really kind of delve into what this surah is all about. Okay? And I'll start off with the very first chapter. And we'll keep these discussions half an hour. Very light, nothing too deep in terms of tafsir, but there are an immense amount of lessons in there. Right now, I'm 7 minutes into my speech. I want to make sure that I get to 30 minutes max. Because like I said before, it's enough. A little bit of a jolt, a little bit of a reminder for myself and for all of you is enough in this month of Ramadan. As it is, we spend our entire day fasting and worshiping Allah, but it's important that we do take some lessons from this book, inshallah. So if I can ask you to please join me with your Qur'ans in your homes. Excuse me, that would be great. As a family sitting around having your English translations so you know exactly what's being read. And we will group certain verses together. Sometimes we'll discuss one verse. Sometimes we'll discuss several groups together that have a common theme. But we will do our best, like I said, to come across the themes and then make it more of a relevant, prevalent discussion where we can apply these principles today and better our life and move away from these dangers and isms that exist today, inshallah. Okay. The very opening discussion in this surah is a very, very ajib one. I think that's what drew me right away to the chapter, is that when I read the first one, I thought, wow, this really literally feels like it's revealed for us today. Okay. The Quran talks about the idea in this beginning chapter. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. La tuqaddimu bayna yaday. Okay. Between you and who? Allah wa Rasul. Okay. Do not, it's so beautiful. Oh, you who believe, first of all. So it's a very specific group that the Quran is mentioning. It's not the Ya ayyuhan nas. It's not Ya bani Adama. It's not Ya ayyuhal kuffar or the Ahl Kitab. No, it's you, mashallah, the Ahl Iman, the mu'mineen. So these are not people who don't know any better. These are people who believe, who do Iman, who do Amal Saleh, who believe, who have Iman, everything. But yet still, this opening verse says what? Do not do what? Do not do tuqaddam. Don't do muqaddama. Don't go ahead of Allah and the Prophet. Or don't go ahead of what is between Allah and the Prophet. Instead, what? Wattaqullah. Be God conscious. Be God centric. What does it mean to be God centric and God conscious? Right? It inquires what? Inna Allah sami'ul alim. Allah surely is listening. He's well aware. He's well aware. Okay? Now, what does this verse mean? And I'll give you one story that Allah Subhanahu mentions in the book. He talks about the fact that there was a group of people who were traveling with the Holy Prophet during the month of Ramadan. And it appears by the story that these are in the beginnings of the year of the Sharia, is basically where Ramadan now is established as a wajib fast. And the Prophet is trying to establish the Sharia and the different ahkam that goes with the act of fasting. That they travel, they get to a point where they cross that limit, that hadd tarakhuz, where now, of course, you are considered to be a musafir. And once that happens, now you have to break your fast. You don't break your fast beforehand, right? It's a good fiqhi reminder for yourself and for me. If we are planning to travel on the day that we're fasting. Let's say we're going to, I don't know, to Sydney, let's say, for example, driving all that way, okay? We can't wake up in the morning, have breakfast in the morning in Melbourne and say, okay, I'm not going to fast anyways. No, you keep your need for fasting. You fast until you cross the border, meaning until you cross that limit where you are now considered to be a traveler. And then at that moment when you cross, now you can open your fast. Before that, however, you can't. So the Prophet now reaches this area with his travelers, and he says, after the Salat of Zuhr, bring me a khajur, bring me a date and some water, let me open my fast. Because now we are considered to be travelers, and we don't fast while we're traveling. And the majority of the people did that except for a group of people. A group of people, right? They now said to themselves that if traveling is so difficult, if traveling is so difficult, and we're fasting while we travel, then there must be a high level of reward for fasting while we're traveling. So we're going to keep fasting, he says to the Holy Prophet. Even though you've opened your fast, even though for you now, you're no longer wajib for you to fast, we're going to go ahead and fast because we want that extra reward. We think that if we fast while we're traveling, it's extra credits. And the Prophet says that your fasting is actually considered to be a sin now, something that's made wajib by the Quran, by our action. It could be very much a gunnah. Why? Because they went ahead of the Prophet when it came to something between Allah and the Prophet. Bain Allahi wa Rasul. Between Allah and the Prophet there is a Sharia, there are rulings. Don't go ahead of what's between, meaning don't think you know more than the Holy Prophet. Or don't take the Sharia into our hands. Now today, with all due respect, a lot of us do that. We make things that are haram on us wajib makruh, mustahab. Right? We think, no, we have to do it. No. Even though, at that moment now, the heart isn't ready for it. Says no. Imam Ali says that if your nawafil prayers, if your mustahab acts interfere with your wajib acts, drop the nawafil. Meaning what? At that moment, your heart isn't ready for anything else but fara'id, but wajib. So do the wajib act and move on. But when your heart is ready, when your heart wants to have more, at that moment then, yes, give it more. But not when it is in a state of idbar where it doesn't want to do anything else. Even in the month of fasting, I've seen individuals, I've spoken to individuals, elderly individuals. The doctors have pleaded with them, please don't fast this month of Ramadan. This will act up, that will act up. You will set your recovery back a number of days. You're doing more damage to yourself than good while you're fasting. So they'll call me and say, Maulana, can I fast? I say, look, if the doctor is telling you can't and you yourself feel weak, then no, you can't fast. In fact, that fasting, because you're doing harm on yourself, becomes a difficulty in the eyes of Allah subhanahu. But no, we think, no, I'm going to do it. Right? We think that, it's okay if Allah says that, in the Quran, He says very openly in Surah Baqarah, that if you are a musafir, you don't fast. It's okay, I'm going to fast because I want to get that extra credit. That extra credit is given to you by the same God that says not to fast. Can you imagine? Right? So a lot of us do that. We take on the Sharia into our own hands. Okay? We believe that no, this is the way it ends up being. And what ends up happening is that we end up developing a different type of deen, which I refer to, which, not me, sorry. I've heard it used by my teachers in the Hausa, deen khayali, as they say in Farsi. Deen khayali. Khayal, it's what's in our head. Right? What we think is right, as opposed to deen kitabi, what's actually written inside of our book. So the book is saying A, we think, no, I think it's B. Let's go down B. And because we're going down B, we're actually putting more pressure on ourselves. And we end up making the deen harder than it should be. And that's the crux of this very first verse of Surah Hujurat. The deen was meant to be easy for us. Allah does not wish harm on us. Allah wishes us to be easy. Yes, there's a matter of us pushing ourselves to reach our capacity. But when it's physically demanding and physically taxing for you, and at that moment now the body says no, the experts say no, Allah says no, but you out of your stubbornness, or you think you know more than the Prophet does, end up saying, oh no, I'm going to do it. Right? So the alim says no, the doctor says no, your kids say no, but you're going to do it. And so I get a call from at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Yeah, my mother is not feeling well. She's practically passed out and fainted. What do? I tell them, open her fast. Please, for the love of God, give her some water, sprinkle some water on her face, and tell her to stop fasting. She's doing more zulm on her body. Can you imagine now doing all of that, now to the point where you're weak and you're passing out and your BP is low and everything is crashing down and you think, oh my God, I'm getting such reward from God. Meanwhile, you're not. God forbid it's written actually in the other books because you're going against exactly what God has prescribed for us. It reminds me of the story of Shaitan, right? Shaitan says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, I will do anything you want, just don't ask me to bow down to Adam. Allah says, look, you are not to dictate to me how to worship me. I am the one being worshipped. I will dictate to you how to worship me. Worshipping me includes you bowing down to Adam. So sometimes in the month of Ramadan, we think, oh my God, when I should not be fasting, I'm a diabetic, for example. Or let's say, for example, even in this Corona era, okay, I'm prone to it, or the doctor has said, look, it's not a good idea for you to fast. Keep your mouth not dry, keep yourself hydrated, blah, blah, blah. All of those, and you are a high-risk patient, for example. The deen says, please do not fast. If you fast and you cause damage to your body, you'll be held accountable. An act of worship that could cause you to be held accountable in the most negative way. Okay, that's what's meant by the idea of muqaddam, to go ahead of the Prophet, right? To think for a moment that I know more than he does, right? In the process, we end up being a mutakallif. And the Prophet says, Inna Allah la yuhibbul mutakallifin. One is a mukallif, one is a mutakallif. A mukallif is one who knows that he or she is accountable in front of Allah. Like when you turn baligh or baligha, right? You become a mukallif now. Meaning the Sharia is wajib on you. But a mutakallif is one that makes that responsibility harder than it should be. And the hadith says, Inna Allah la yuhibbul mutakallifin. Allah does not love those who are the mutakallifin, who make the deen harder than it is. You know how many phone calls I get? The people call me and say, Maulana, I have a nightly ritual. I read Surah Mulk, I read Surah Yasin, I read Surah Rahman before I go to bed. Good for you. But there are some nights where I'm tired, Maulana. Is it okay if I go to sleep without reading the Surah? Of course it is, sister, brother, yes. As opposed to you, face down, as opposed to you reading the Quran as a chore and now developing a distaste for it, God forbid, leave it alone. When your heart is ready for the Quran, then give it as much as you want. Okay? It's important sometimes that we check our own pulse, that we check at that moment, am I only at the level of wajibat? Then only give the level of wajibat. Don't give anything else. Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi in his Adab al-Salat, and I'll be quoting this book a lot in my lectures. Adab al-Salat, Etiquettes of Salat. It's a beautiful book. It's a very irfanic, mystic book on the etiquettes of Salat. In the opening discussion, before he actually gets to the sections of Salat, he has about 17, 18 chapters on just preliminary talks about getting ourselves ready for this Mi'raj and ascension towards Allah. One discussion is that not allowing ourselves to make it harder than it should. Understanding that everybody has a capacity. The Prophet himself says, worship Allah to the best of your ability. Sometimes the best of your ability is this. For example, there are people who spend their entire life just waking up for Fajr. Their entire life is trying to wake up for Fajr. And they spend their entire life setting 3 alarms and Surah Kahf and Ayatul Kursi and asking their spouse, blah, blah, blah. And that's their capacity. That's their capacity. Then there are those who fly through Fajr but can't stop listening to music. Then there are those who don't like music, but non-mahram is an issue. Ghibat is an issue. Whatever the case may be, everybody has their journey. Everybody has their difficulty. Understand what your difficulty is and worship Allah accordingly. Accordingly. Let's not be individuals who make the deen harder than it is. Right? Because sometimes we have this incorrect notion of God. I don't want anyone here to allow shaitan to come in and infiltrate that image of God inside of us. Where we believe sometimes no matter what I do, God will never accept my amal. It'll never be enough. How many of us out there right now, I ask myself, do you think that your amal are sufficient for God? Now mind you, it's one thing to think that, no, I need to do more for God. It's one thing where I think no matter how much I do, God will never accept my amal. They're two different mentalities. The first one is recommended, right? We should look at our good acts as qalil and our evil acts as kafir, our good acts as deficient, and our our evil acts as too sufficient, meaning too much. That's there. But not to the point where no matter what I do, he'll never be said. What does God want from me? Why does he keep pushing me for more and more and more? I can't give you more. Who asked you to give you more than you can? Why are you looking at everybody else saying, oh, look at him, look at her, she's gone to multiple hajjs, she wears hijab, he has a beard, he's gone here, I haven't done this. Whoa, everybody has their capacity. And we will be judged in the grave, not based on A and B and C, but based on what we can do. Allah is fully aware we can do. Look, if you, inside your home, you have 3 or 4 kids, or 2 or 3 kids you're raising. Every child is different. I have 3 kids. All 3 are completely different people. Completely different kids altogether. And my job as a parent is to identify strengths and weaknesses and give each kid their respective capacity. Not expect my 12-year-old to do what I do, not expect my 6-year-old to do what the 12-year-old does. Okay? If that's simple parenting logic in a home of 3 kids, imagine Allah being the murabbi of ours, the nurturer for billions of His creation. How can it be? How can it be that God wants you now to push yourself? Now, how do I know I'm pushing myself? If you're going ahead of the Prophet of Allah or the Sharia itself. If the alim of your time is saying, look, Baba, don't do this. You don't have to do this. Don't push yourself. No, so be it. How many husbands of mine call me and say, my wife, is sleep deprived, right? My wife is practically falling asleep in namaz shab. But, her head hurts all day, she's grumpy, she's not eating, she's getting weak, this and that. Is there anything you can do to convince her to not pray namaz shab if she hasn't slept properly? And I'll tell her that, look, sister, it's great. May Allah increase that tawfiq. But if that mustahab act, to the point where your Zohar Asr now is being affected, your Fajr is being affected, you at home as a mother and a wife and a sister and a servant of God, that's being affected, then maybe you need to check, either go to bed early or pray namaz before you go to bed. My point is, let's not allow shaitan to come in and create this God of mine that will never accept my worship. So what do? I keep doing more, to the point where now I'm lugging myself towards the musalla, right? Lugging myself, checking the end of the chapter, is it almost done? Okay, let's keep reading. There's no lizzat in that. Don't put it down. I'll give you one hadith, inshallah. Let's recite one salawat as I catch my breath. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajum. It's not as easy as it looks to talk to a camera. I would much rather see, mashallah, the nurani faces of the mu'mineen in Melbourne. But khair, inshallah, it is what it is. Which is why, I don't know why, for some reason my mouth is getting very dry, and then, I'm trying to block certain coughs and sneezes. But anyways, in that same book of Adab al-Salat, Imam Khomeini, it's a beautiful hadith, beautiful. I really want my youth especially to ponder on this openly, okay? Please, to really understand this. And I will, this is the last hadith, and then we'll wrap up today's discussion. I promised you max 30 minutes. Imam Sadiq had mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa he mentioned that, and again it's narrated in Adab al-Salat of Imam Khomeini. He says that in my youth, in my younger years, I worshipped Allah a lot. And to the point where it would appear to my father, Imam Baqir alayhi salam, that I was pushing myself. Meaning pushing myself to a level where perhaps the fifth Imam was a little bit cautious. He says, my father one day approached me and said, you don't need to do that much worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when He loves somebody, He accepts very little from them. Oh, it's such a beautiful tradition. When Allah loves somebody, He accepts very little of them. Look, there are certain laws of love, right? Laws of love. Like when you love somebody, your mother, your father, your spouse, your kids, let's say, for example. your children, right? When that love is there, the genuine love is there, let's say for your spouse, inshallah, right? Like a wife loves her husband. And a husband thinks for a moment, we think for a moment as husbands that the wife wants everything, the moon, the Eiffel Tower, everything. When in reality, a wife wants something just very small sometimes. Small tokens of love, okay? Because that love is already there. The smaller the token, the better sometimes. Something as small as, for example, I don't know, on the way back from work, you grab her favorite coffee, for example. Or, for example, she mentioned, I don't know, something about, I haven't had chocolate in so many days. 2 days passes, you come without even telling her, and you bring her, let's say, her favorite chocolate. It's very small, right? How much does the chocolate cost, right? Those small things are accepted by her. Why? Because the love is already there. Okay? When you're trying to establish love with somebody and you give them a small little a chocolate bar, you're like, look, I need more. We're in the establishing phase. But not when the spouse is already established. Okay, in the month of Rajab that just passed 2 months ago, before Sha'ban, right? There's a dua. Ya manajuhu li kulli khair wa amanu saqatu inda kulli shar ya man yu'til kathir bil qalil. Oh, right? He is the one. Allah is the one that what gives a lot in exchange for a little. In exchange for a little. Doesn't require a lot from us. But yes, what He requires is the sincerity of the actions. That's why Imam Ali says small acts of worship, but consistent, are more preferred in the eyes of Allah than huge acts of worship done every so often. That small little chocolate bar that you gave her meant so much to her as opposed to, I don't know, a dozen, 24 roses, 48 roses that you give her once every 3 years. Small acts. Because why? Because it came from you. Didn't come because it was a birthday or this day or that day, the whole world's buying roses, so I bought roses. No, out of the blue, random Wednesday morning, you come say, look, you're craving chocolate, here's your favorite chocolate. It came from you. It came from the sincerity of your heart. She didn't ask for it. That meant so much for her. You thought about me. You thought about me. Right? Imagine now. Imagine for a moment, and I'll end with this, okay? Today we get through our first verse, and that's fine. But think about for a moment, okay? And I'll end with this, inshallah. Think about for a moment that you get a phone call from somebody, okay? And out of the blue, and they say, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? Alhamdulillah, how are you? You know what? I was just thinking about you. I thought I'd call to check in. Like sometimes during this pandemic, I get random phone calls from my community. Just random people. But I have a hi, bye, salam, dua sort of relation, but not really something that's deep. They'll call and say, Assalamu alaikum, and I'm expecting a fiqh question, this issue, that masail. No, Maulana, I just called to see if you're okay. Do you need anything? We're thinking about you and your family. Are you guys okay? Literally, a 30-second conversation that meant so much to us. Why? Because that person was thinking about me, remembered me. Imagine now, in those small acts of worship, you're telling Allah, Allah, I remembered you. I thought of you. How would He feel? That's surrounded by anxiety, surrounded by fear, not knowing what will happen with this virus, with my job, with our finances, in all of that anxiety. For you at that moment to think of me, Allah says, is all I need. That's it. He'll give you 10 more after that, 100 more after that. Right? Think about that feeling you get when somebody calls you out of the blue and says, I was thinking about you, I thought I would say salam. Just checking in on your text, it means the world to us. Same idea. Small acts of worship we do for Allah, that's us saying, Allah, I'm just checking in. I'm just thinking about you. I thought about you. I thought I'd check in and say, you know what, this is my act of worship. From the bottom of my heart. It's a very small, one tasbih of salawat, let's say, for example. One du'a faraj, for example. $1 of sadaqah, for example. One embrace of your mother, for example. One board game with your child, for example. I thought about you, Allah. You don't think for a moment that He'll be happy? That He'll give you 10 more after that? He will. And we need to believe that. Let's not be individuals that the very first verse of Surah Hujurat talks about, that we are going ahead of the Prophet. In the process, what's bound to happen is that we're going to make this deen harder than it should be. And this distaste in our mouth will be there, and we'll eventually kind of move away from the deen. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel efforts, allow us to be close to the Quran in this beautiful month, accept our amal, forgive our sins, and allow us to stand beside the Imam of our time when he comes. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.